Hi there. Grab a cuppa, take a seat, come and meet your health coach. Brought to you by vitalhealthcoaches.com. Hello and welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Clare Sharpen, and today I'm really delighted to welcome Amanda Price to the podcast. Amanda is a health coach specialising in brain health. So it's really great to have you here, Amanda. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you, Claire. Thank you for inviting me on. It's a really good opportunity.
Great. So let's start. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm married with three grown-up children, now all in their 20s. I live in East Sussex, right on the border with Kent. I've moved a lot over the last 20, 30 years, but I hope now I'm settled in East Sussex. I really love playing tennis and walking. Walking's always been a really important part of my life. And I strength train too. I have a background in personal training. Yeah, so that's me really.
So I understand you have an interest in brain health, like me. We're brain geeks together. That's good. So why did you become a health coach? What sparked your interest in health coaching?
It was a journey really. It was quite a natural journey because having lived abroad, I was doing sort of typical trailing spouse. Don't like that expression work. And for example, I was teaching English as a foreign language. And then I got into Nordic walking and I trained as a Nordic walking coach. And that led me, because I had to do fitness training for that, led me to get my personal training qualification. And that led me on into nutrition coaching, and which subsequently, because of the type of people I was working with a lot of midlife women who needed a bit more than the personal training could offer. I've discovered health coaching, but there were other things going on at the same time. So from a career point of view, it was quite a natural journey. But I also had, my brother was very sick, and it was really at that time that I started making the connection between health and how we lived our lives, not just what we ate. That was back in sort of 2010, and just before that, a year or so before that, my mum was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So I think a combination of those things made me examine my own lifestyle, and I made a few changes, particularly to my diet, which had an impact, positive impact. So I think the sort of combination of that side of my sort of personal life and where my career was going led me to do my health coaching certification, which I did in COVID, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, like a lot of people, it lent the opportunity to study and have the time to do it.
And so, what led you to a specific interest in brain health?
Well, my mum's Alzheimer's. I think having studied as a health coach, I started to understand the connections between everything in the body, taking a holistic view of health. I discovered Dr. Dale Bredesen, who's a US neuroscientist who runs Apollo Health, and I've just recently completed the course that Apollo Health offer for health coaches. It's called RECODE, which stands for Reversing Cognitive Decline, but it's really about supporting people, or prevention, first of all, preventing dementia, and also helping people who are already showing signs of cognitive decline. It was all too late for my mother in that sense. If I'd known what I know now, if I'd known it back in 2009, what a pleasure that would have been to have been able to support her. But I mean, that's a long time ago now. And we didn't know what we know now. So, but it was really that, yeah, I mean, I don't think I would be, perhaps, I don't know, who knows, maybe I would still be interested in brain health if I hadn't got a mother with Alzheimer's, but yeah.
Goodness, that's really hard hitting to hear. If you knew then what you know now, your sense that things could be different. So let's dive into that, because there might be people listening who are in a position with a loved one at the moment with Alzheimer's dementia. So whilst most people would say all of us are scared of developing dementia, particularly if it's been very close to you in your family, I don't think we really realise, do we, that we can reduce our risk of developing dementia. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, we definitely can. And you're right. So few people do realize that they can reduce their risk of dementia. I think, if anybody's really interested, they should look at the work of Dr. Dale Bredesen, because he's actually, and he's written lots of books as well, but there's increasing evidence that by supporting our whole health, we can reduce our risk of dementia. That, of course, there are lots of tests people can do. I mean, even finding out whether you carry the gene that predisposes you towards dementia or Alzheimer's disease in particular, the ApoE4 gene, which I carry a copy of, may help you make decisions about your lifestyle. But that's a very, very personal decision about whether to find out whether you carry that gene or not. But I think it's about looking at, there's a whole broad range of different reasons why someone might develop dementia. And Alzheimer's disease, of course, is just one form of dementia. It's the most common. But it's understanding that there are many possible reasons why somebody might develop dementia. It may just be, more around nutrient deficiencies. A lot of work being done around omega-3s and B vitamins, but also it might be things like toxins, living in moldy properties, external toxins, high levels of pollution. So it's, I mean, there are lots of possible reasons. And I think for someone with cognitive decline, it's about looking at the lifestyle and looking where the possible reasons might be.
And by looking at lifestyle, and you mentioned looking holistically, what sort of things could people start thinking about looking at?
Well, I mean, the easiest thing to start with is probably diet. I mean, I always get my clients to reflect, spend some time reflecting on their lifestyle and having a think about, because we don't often do that. We don't often think about it, but to actually sort of look at aspects of their lifestyle and think, actually, maybe my diet isn't great, or, oh no, diet's okay, but I'm massively stressed. Stress is a risk factor for long-term cognitive decline. I mean, it's a risk factor for heart disease. It impacts us massively. So chronic stress, maybe sleep. Everything's connected. So it's looking at, if you're someone who doesn't sleep well, maybe that's the area you start working on.
Yeah.
And then we come and look at other aspects of lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay, so there's,
does that answer your question?
Yeah, so there's potentially all sorts of different things. Sometimes I think we think there's one solution, don't we? Like there must be one thing, and actually one thing always helps, but often there's multiple things, aren't there? And for all of us, there can be different priorities and different things to look at.
Yeah. I mean, we know inflammation is a really, important thing to consider, as it is for most chronic disease. It seems to be the reason behind a lot of chronic, what they call them, non-communicable diseases.
Yeah.
So type 2 diabetes is all linked in to inflammation, and we know that type 2 diabetes is a big risk factor for Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
So anybody who's been told they're pre-diabetic or their blood sugar's high, that's a standard test you can get done if you can get to see your GP. That might be something you want to work on in order to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease later on in life.
Yeah. So given everything you've learnt since you were saying about 2010, I'd be interested to know, what do you do, Amanda, to support your own brain health?
Now, I mean, I did make changes back then around my diet. I cut out gluten, and I know that's quite, I don't know, maybe even controversial. You still see lots of people saying people don't need to give up gluten.
Yeah.
But I did, having been to the GP several times and complained about various symptoms. I didn't get any joy, and I gave up gluten and all these. I mean, some of them were just minor irritating things. Like I used to get eczema on my fingers, and all went. So for me, that was quite a big thing. I'd also read a book called Grain Brain, which also persuaded me of the benefits. So I did that, then started focusing a bit more on eating, getting the veg in my diet. I think now, I mean, it's been quite a while. I think more recently, I did live in France for 5 years, and I've really cut back on my wine. So that was really hard living in France. It was quite hard not eating gluten as well, living in France. But I've really cut back on alcohol because I do believe, I mean, there is no safe level, I don't think, of alcohol. I think you have to still weigh it up, maybe one glass of wine in a social situation with the social benefits you get. But that's been a big change, and it's focus on sleep. So alcohol was a real factor there, and the things I've done around my sleep routine. I think they're the really big things I've done in the last sort of 5 years. I've always exercised and now focus more perhaps on more strength training, just generally for my brain health, but also for healthy longevity.
Yeah. And tell us, what does strength training do for brain health? I think that's interesting.
Yeah. Strength training and other types of exercise do something, they help produce something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is like people describe it as being fertilizer for the brain. So that's we know we're getting a benefit from that. And there seems to be links between, they say the size of your leg muscles, because they're the big muscles in our bodies, and between brain health. Dr. Tommy Wood does a lot of work around exercise and brain health. So anybody interested or is skeptical, it's worth looking up his work. Yeah, I mean, and we also know that getting a heart rate up, which you can do when you're strength training as well.
Yeah,
it's good for our cardiovascular health, good for vascular health, and poor vascular health can lead to vascular dementia, but it's also a risk factor for Alzheimer's as well. So anything we can do to get the blood flowing, having more muscle is important for our metabolic health. So it reduces our risk of type 2 diabetes, which in turn reduces our risk of Alzheimer's disease.
Like you were saying earlier, they're all interconnected. Yeah.
So there are lots of wins, lots and lots of wins.
Let's explore a bit more about you as a health coach. Who is it that you work with? And given everything you've explained so far, how do you think health coaching can help them?
I work with, basically I work with anybody who wants to reduce their risk of developing dementia. If that's what's worrying someone, then let's work together and see what we can do.
And presumably you can't start too early, really.
No. I mean, you hear different figures, but I mean, I think what you do in your 40s, I mean, this is why when I was working more with midlife women, or specifically with midlife women, I was saying, that perimenopause phase of life is so important for our brain health. It's how we look after ourselves. You'll probably have a much more or an easier journey through perimenopause if you're looking after, you're prioritizing your brain health, plus you're reducing your risk later on. But the same applies to men. What we do in our 30s, even, I mean, some people are even saying as young as 20s, because of the diet some people are eating. It's impacting brain health really early on.
And like you say, stress and environmental toxins and the whole kind of lifestyle shebang.
But it's never too soon, but it's never too late either. Someone in their 60s maybe who's just experienced the death of a parent from dementia might think, right, is it my turn next? You can do so much. You can do so much to reduce your risk and improve your health outlook.
So if someone comes to you in that position, how can health coaching, how can you help them? What do you do?
Health coaching we work as guides. So I've talked quite a lot about information, and I've shared information and facts. But while that can be useful to someone, it's more about having someone working alongside you to guide you. I always describe it as helping someone get from where they are now in terms of their health to where they'd like to be. And whilst you'll never know to what extent you've reduced your risk of dementia, you might know that you no longer have pre-diabetes, for example. You might know that your blood pressure's come down. You might have lost weight and are now, much healthier and can exercise, and the inflammation's reduced, so you haven't got the pain in your knees anymore. So, and things like that are then measurable. We can see that. I think the thing we're about to talk about reducing risk of dementia is it's not tangible, but usually there are other side effects of supporting your brain health. So it's sort of identifying what someone's goals are and making them what smart goals we use, don't we, as a term, but making them real, something they can measure, and helping them get from A to B. And I'm acting as their, accountability partner, somebody to cheerlead, encourage them on their journey, and helping the client identify themselves where the changes should be made or where they can make changes. I always talk about start with the low-hanging fruit. Identify what you can change, what's the most easy thing to change, and we go from there.
And so for some people that might be, you've described diet, what they're eating. For others that might be sleep. For others that might be changes to exercise and movement and how that works. Yeah. So it would be different for everybody, presumably.
Yeah, and that's why I say with my one-to-one coaching, it's very flexible. So I don't say, right, we're going to do this, and this in this order. It's very much about the individual and what they are experiencing at that moment. So you start with someone where they are, and it might be about encouraging them to start exercising, or ways to manage stress.
So how do you work? How does the process work if someone comes to you looking for health coaching?
Well, I have like most health coaches, a 30-minute sort of discovery call, which is free, and which is an opportunity for a potential client to find out a bit about me, about how I work, about what sort of results they might get. It's also an opportunity for me to get to know someone and to see if there's potential to work together. I might also share something if they already know that chronic stress is a real issue for them. I might share a very simple breathwork tool or something like that with them, just to sort of give them something to sort of think about or to use. Which, whether or not they decide to work with me, might be useful for them.
Yeah.
If someone decides to work with me one-to-one, I will spend probably the first session with them. It will be very much like finding out session, deciding between us maybe where we want to start working, and put together, a rough idea of the sorts of areas we're going to work on. And then I always suggest to someone that we work together for at least 4 weeks, ideally 8 or longer, 8 weeks or longer, because I think it often takes that long to make changes, but I think people get better results. It does depend a little.
And do you work online and in person?
Yes, I work. Yes, I'm very happy to work in person if someone's local. Otherwise it's online. I mainly work online, but
yeah. Okay. So if someone has been listening to this and is thinking, oh, yeah, this maybe is something I need to start thinking about, but maybe feeling a bit daunted, would you suggest, what would your first starting point be, would you say?
I would say spend some time just reflecting on your lifestyle. Think about the sort of different areas of your health. Maybe you have some symptoms, and just thinking about why they might be. I think because most of us know ourselves, and we are the experts on ourselves, but I don't think we often spend much time thinking about that. So I think reflecting on your lifestyle and trying to work out maybe where you'd like to make changes. So if you're in a situation of chronic stress, maybe you're, looking after aging parents. Maybe one of your parents has got dementia. That's going to be having an impact on you. So maybe that's the area you would like to work on.
Mm.
So I think it's hard to say, you know, I mean, there are so many things we could do, but to say this is the most important thing, I think it is really difficult, because it's going to be different for different people, because they may already have a pretty amazing diet, for example, but the stress is out of control.
Or sleep, or
sleep.
Yeah.
Well, sleep and stress tend to go together as well. Yeah.
Okay, Amanda, where can someone find you?
Oh, well, I have a very nice profile on vitalhealthcoaches.com, where you can read a bit about me, and you can look at the what I offer. I've also got, as well as the one-to-one coaching, I've got some group coaching. I haven't set a date for it yet. I'm still very much in the process of putting it together. But I think small group coaching works for some people, and it obviously lowers the cost. But the group coaching I quite like for accountability. I quite enjoy doing it. It can be a nice way to work.
Okay. Well, I think it's been really interesting to hear some of your thoughts about approaching brain health for ourselves, whatever age we're at, and also for people perhaps who are at the early stages of cognitive decline. Thank you so much for sharing with us and your insights. It's been really interesting having you. So thanks, Amanda.
Oh, well, thank you, Claire. Thank you for inviting me on to talk about what I do, but also just to share that we can do so much to reduce our risk of dementia. It's the kind of message I try to push out. So thank you for the opportunity to talk.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. For more on how a health coach can support you in your health journey, please go to vitalhealthcoaches.com.